Got it. Yep. I think we're recording now. Yes, we are.
Yep.
All right, and it's 5. Okay, we'll get started, everybody. Welcome. We had, I think, 59 people registered. We've maybe get a few more, I hope. Welcome today. It looks like a nice day outside for a change. We're going to get started right off today. Today, we're going to talk about trips on the river, and we're going to have various speakers talk about trips that they've taken, but we're going to start with Wayne Howard. A lot of you folks might know Wayne. He's been with Genesee River Watch for close to forever, I bet. And he's our GIS guy and has done a lot of work, and he's going to review a interactive map that he put together to help people navigate canoe and kayak trips. So go ahead, Wayne. Thanks.
Well, good morning, everyone. So I'm going to start off on the Genesee River Watch website and show you how to find the Blueway map. And if you click on the Genesee River, and just scroll down a little bit, you'll see the Blueway map. And there's actually two Blueway maps. One is what we refer to as the overview Blueway map. And that is it's in brochure format. And there is a static map here that you will see in along the Blueway. I think they're out there, George.
Yep.
Are those being? And there's also a URL and trying to blank. What is that? A UPC code? QR code. Thank you. That's available. That will take you right to the interactive map. And so this is a handy little cheat sheet that you'll see that has mile markers on it. And it's very much a simplified version of the other map that is on there on the website, which is the interactive Blueway map. And when you click on that, I already have it preloaded in another browser. But when you click on that, it'll bring up our interactive Blueway map. And so what I'm going to do for a few minutes is to give you an overview of some of the noted features in the interactive map, and then give you some time to ask some questions. But the best way to get used to using the interactive Blueway map is to just give it a try. So we have some buttons here along the bottom, and I'm going to go over some of these. The first one is the legend, and it will show you some of the features that pop up when you're using the interactive map. And when you zoom in, you'll notice that additional features show up. And so some of these appear when you're zoomed in closer. And so what shows up when you're looking at it? So what looks like a canoe or kayak are the access sites. And if you click on an access site, it'll tell you a little bit about the access site, but also at the bottom give you some pictures that George took that, and I think Mike probably took some of these too, that pop up to give you an idea what the access site looks like on the ground. And so each of the, or most of all of the sites have pictures that show up. Not all of them do. And the interactive map is always a work in progress. So you'll see things being added and removed from time to time, mostly added. And so there's some basic information with the pop-up on the access sites. You'll also notice that there are mile markers, and the mile markers start from the headwaters up in Pennsylvania, and the count starts there and counts all the way down to the Rochester embayment. Also of note, there are some very important things. So we have what we call obstructions. So when you get to Portageville, for instance, you see a warning, must exit here. And because there's some waterfalls coming up. So with the red exclamation point are some obstructions. And You'll also notice something, really cool feature that we added is to show what the current water level and flow rate is. This is actually a close to real-time measurement of the depth based on either from NOAA or USGS, and you'll see that there, if you look over here in the legend, you'll see that it looks like a little like a gear. And in most places, I've turned off the duplicates where there's one next to each other. In this case, they apparently added a new one, but there are two different. So this is a good illustration. There are two different types. This one is the USGS gauge, and the other one I think is NOAA. Yep, that's NOAA. And the interesting thing about this, first of all, it's actually going out and looking at the actual gauge, and it's updated several times a day. The last time it was updated was yesterday at 10 p.m. And you get a little chart. So you can click on the chart, and you can actually see what the level was over the past week. And you may recall that we had a pretty good rain on Sunday, and it's been declining slowly over time. And the NOAA also has a pop-up, and that will show you some a different type of graph over time. I think it's showing in feet. I'm not sure if any of them I think some of them might actually show flow rates, depending on what gauge you're on.
Yep.
So we looked at the access sites with the pictures and the mile markers and obstruction and the water levels and flow rates and the pop-up charts. So I'm going to move over to the next tool. We have a base map gallery, and by default, we are looking at OpenStreetMap. If you wanted to get a view on the ground, you can click on either imagery or imagery with labels, and you've changed the base map so we can see what it looks like on the ground a little more closer to what it looks like on the ground. And you have a variety of base maps that you can use. I do like to use, when we're in map mode, I like OpenStreetMap, and so that is the default that we're working with.
How's he doing?
And so if you do find a place that you like and you want to plan a trip and you want to share with others in your group of where to meet up, you could also create a custom map. And so when you're zoomed into where you want the map to be, you click on print. And the internet is working a little slow this morning. I'm hoping that it pops up here. It usually pops up pretty quickly. I may actually let that load for a minute. While that's loading, I'm going to bring up another tool. I'll just skip over that for a moment. In addition, it's ready. So I'm going to click on print. It's going to create a PDF, and there's some settings that you can play around with. I usually just use the default settings. There's additional settings that are advanced. But when you click print, it's going to create a custom map for you, and we'll give that a moment to pop up. Usually pops up quite a bit quicker than that. But in addition to sharing it in a PDF format, you could also email or send it to Facebook or Twitter a link to the map. I'm going to click on email right now, and it's actually going to bring up my email browser and give me a link. And if I click on that link, it would take me right back to wherever it was when I created the link. So it's the map zoomed in to wherever you are. And I'm not sure why we're having a little difficulty with print, but it usually works pretty well. I will try it one more time.
Yeah, it worked quite well the other day when I was working on the slides, Wayne, so I know it operates.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'll give that one more try while maybe we're doing some Q&A. So I looked at the legend, I looked at the base map gallery print, and we were just working with Share. And another cool feature is if you were planning a trip and you wanted to, say you're meeting up with a group, but maybe you have another a driver that's going to pick you up at your destination, and they dropped you off, say at Transit Bridge, and you're going to paddle down to Canoe. You can use the directions tool. And I'm going to click on Transit Bridge to start with. It's going to put a little marker there. And then secondly, I'll click on Canoe. And you'll notice it actually highlights the road, the best road that, or probably the most efficient road, a way of getting there. And you can, base this on, driving time, or if you're walking or distance, you can optimize that in any way you want. Driving time is probably, the default is pretty good. And you'll notice that it also creates a little triptych on the bottom, which is kind of like the AAA triptych they used to make. Looking a little nostalgia here. And it'll actually give you the directions on the route to take. And I mean, in this case, we're pretty much staying on the main road. But when you get into town, it tells you the specific streets that you would turn on in case, so you don't get lost going through town, although it's pretty much the main road. And so you could use the directions tool to create a little directions map. Of course, you can pick a larger distance if you wanted. So if you wanted to get there from Rochester or somewhere farther up the watershed. So if I start in Avon and I want to get down to Scioto, I click on directions, and it's going to give you the greater the distance, it might be a little more useful in terms of telling you what is the best route to take, what is the best way to get from one location to the other. And it will, of course, give you the detailed directions on how to get there. And also the amount of time that will take you and how far of a travel. So here's 72 miles in an hour and 18 minutes, and gives you an estimate of how long it'll make the trip. I'm going to just click refresh on the map, and I'm going to try that tool one more time. But you can see that usually the whole map pops up. Maybe they're doing some maintenance or something this morning. Usually it pops up pretty quickly. It popped up quicker than it did the first time we tried, so that's a good sign. And I'm going to try that print feature again and zoom into a portion on the map. It came up faster now, that's a good sign. And when I click print, and we'll let that go for a minute. The last feature I was going to cover is there's an about tool, and we've posted some safety tips and paddling safety tips and additional information. And also, we've also credited our partners for this project at the bottom here. The print feature usually works. It's being temperamental this morning, but I'm going to try it in a different browser while we take an opportunity for you to answer some questions that you may have. This was very much a whirlwind tour, but the best way to get used to using the interactive Blueway map is just to go to the website and give it a try.
Wayne, can you cover the measurement tool?
Oh, sure. There's also a measurement tool. And that just pops up. You want to pick I usually pick the middle tool, the distance. And similar to the directions tool, you click wherever you're starting, and you can measure whatever distance it is between 2 points. Probably could have picked something a little more useful in distance.
Well, it's particularly useful if you're actually on the river and you want to know how far it is between two river points.
Sure, it's going to give you distance as the crow flies, but um,
Well, you can make it go around corners if
if you're savvy.
pick
You,
your
you click on one
intersections
point,
carefully.
and yeah, you could just click that's a good point, Mike. You can click multiple times, and you can just get the rough distance it is from one point to another. And that's almost about 2 miles on what I just clicked on.
Right.
I'm just going to bring it up in a different browser. Maybe I'll have better luck. So any questions?
I would add one other thing based on my experience the other day, and this may be of limited application, but if any of you are, for example, giving a presentation to Sierra Club or ADK and you wanted to use this map as part of it, and you found yourself frustrated by the map's determination of what appears when you print a map, you can print screen the whole thing, paste it onto a PowerPoint slide, and then crop it and enlarge it to whatever it is you want. You get a fairly decent rendition of what's on that map. It expands pretty well if you crop it down and then re-expand it to a PowerPoint size.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. It does work.
Well, the print tool is really cool when it works because it actually creates you a little map and gives you legend and puts a scale on there, makes a real map. I usually don't have any issue with it, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not happy today.
Okay. That happens.
I'm going to maybe try and pick a different format instead of speaking of which, putting it into a PowerPoint instead of doing PDF. I'm going to try JPEG and see if that works any better. It's not happy.
Okay.
Any other questions?
We'll certainly have opportunity for questions at the end too, if people.
Yes, I have one. I understand that there are some rapids in different sections. Are those marked also, or do you just mark the waterfalls like you have in Letchworth?
Well, so far we've only done dams, low head dams and waterfalls. There are a couple of them I know near Genesee. There's one. I'm sure there's plenty of them around. There's York Landing. There's different spots. We haven't tried to put those in yet, but that's a good point.
Yeah, it's certainly something we can easily add.
I have a question too.
Yep.
So I live in Leroy. I very often drive on Route 20. I happen to live on Route 20, and I know that Route 20 Avon put in so-called launch area is pretty inaccessible as a launch. I mean, I was there a couple times to look it over, and it's either super squishy mud or it's about a 12 to 15 foot embankment. You have to walk a little goat path down, which is like almost 90 degrees straight down.
Yep.
There's a access on both sides of 20. That's the south side. Is the north side? Maybe I'm thinking Scottsville.
Yep.
But anyway, that access is there a trick to that access?
The Scottsville access?
Yep.
No, I'm zooming into it now. So go ahead, George.
Well, let's go to the other one though. I mean, Scottsville's a little easier to get into than the one in Avon. And I'd like to talk about the Avon one. I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
I agree with you 100%. That is actually one of the two sites that we've secured funding to fix.
Oh, great.
That's a DEC fishing access site. Now you got nice stairs going down, as you can see in the picture, but then you see where you were just talking about there in that picture. It's terrible. So we got funding from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and to upgrade this site so you can get in easier, and also the one in Genesee at the River Access Park. They're both the same, very difficult to get in and out.
Yeah, great.
Yep. And then Scottsville is on our list. There's several of them. We have a list that's part of our report that we did to assess all of the sites. And a lot of them just need some better way to get from the parking lot to the river.
Right.
Because they're so steep or very difficult. And so we're hoping as time goes on to get funding to upgrade those. So it makes it a little bit easier to get your kayak actually down to the water.
Yeah,
We're going to
that's
cover
great.
that also in some depth in the third section this morning.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. This map is great.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. That was a nice job Wayne did there. It works nice. Beauty of it is we can add to it. Currently, there's a couple of sites that are actually there, but the owners, for one reason or another, don't want it listed yet, like the Geneseo site, even though you can get in and out there just as difficult as Avon is. They don't want it listed because they don't want to encourage people to use it until it gets fixed. There's an informal site in Fillmore, which I'll talk about later. So,
Okay, cool.
yep.
Okay,
Okay. Thanks, Wayne.
you're welcome.
Next group here, a couple of folks. We got John Crane from Genesee Waterway Center, and Peter Abel hasn't signed in yet, so I'm not sure where he is. I'll see if I can get a hold of him, or maybe Mike Haw could try to see if you could catch up with him, maybe.
I will do that.
All right, thanks. I don't know how many folks, John will bring you all up to speed about the Genesee Waterway Center, but it's down there in Genesee Park, and John runs that operation. He's going to talk about the things that he has available to people to get in and out of the water. So John, are you there?
I certainly am, and thank you so much.
Sure.
If it's all right, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here.
Yep.
Got a few visuals for everybody. Great. So, yeah, we are the Genesee Waterway Center. We're right down here in downtown Rochester, right in Genesee Valley Park. And we've got a fairly expansive operation, being that we kind of cover every form of access when it comes to paddle sports on the river. We have two sites, both Genesee Waterway Center and Lock 32 over in Pittsburgh. And we're just going to kind of talk a little bit about what it is that we offer and what access looks like at our little corner of the river here. So we do not only canoeing and kayaking, but we also kind of really focus on rowing. We have various ADA partnerships through CP Rochester that allows us to kind of get folks with either physical needs on the water, through bigger boats, things like our outrigger canoes. And we're also a public access site, so anybody at any time can just drop in, bring their own boat down, car top it, and leave from there. A little bit about rowing. We play host to a bunch of different teams, 6 major teams, high schools and colleges alike. We house a whole bunch of single scullers. That's the smaller boats with 2 oars. What you see here is sweep. That's a bigger team effort, 1 oar each. We also have some coach masters programming that we set up during the year. We're also the site of the Genesee, head of the Genesee Major Regatta in October. It's part of it's called something new now. It was the River Romance Weekend, but I believe it's now the Rochester Rock the Riverway Weekend.
Yep.
So that's in October. We really enjoy having that. And we're also really excited about an upcoming partnership with our local schools for the first ever Rochester-based youth rowing team coming in 2022. The big thing we do in the summertime is canoeing and kayaking rentals. We partner up with a whole bunch of different camps through Rochester's recreational program, as well as a bunch of different schools to do some educational programming based on the river. We've had a few science teachers really make the most out of their access to the river here and do some ecological studies, both on the river and the canal, which has been really great. We partner up with Seneca Zoo as well, and get their kids on the water to do various programs throughout the year. It's a lot of fun. And we're also open to the public for rentals. As a nonprofit, our mission is to keep things as cheap as possible so the most amount of people can access it. So we're really excited to see lots and lots of folks in the summertime come down and try kayaking and canoeing sometimes for the very first time. It's super rewarding. Here's a group of kids, and you can see how excited they are. Quite a few of these kids, that was their first time out, and we really enjoyed having them. Here's a little photo from Google Maps about what access actually looks like from our location here in the Genesee Valley Park. We have the really special privilege of having access to north, south, east, and west. If you look west over here on the Erie Canal, we have some X's there. The issue, we don't really rent there. We don't allow our rentals to go over that way, mostly because it's a little bit touch and go, because there's really high walls on either side. But we have rowers go down that way as long as there's a coach launch with them. And besides that, we can go south all the way to Letchworth if you felt the need to, spend hours and hours and hours on a kayak. You can head east on the canal, head to Lock 33 and Lock 32, and enjoy the whole process of kind of moving through those awesome pieces of infrastructure. And of course, going north to see City Center. You can't go that far because High Falls is there. I'm sure you would find that on your map. Which is an amazing tool, by the way. I'm really glad to see that. But we also kind of expand that access as well. We partner up with the city and Genesee River Watch to offer some paddles in the lower Genesee from a great little space called Penn, which they've been developing, which is really amazing. It's right down by the mouth of the river at the lake. And there's some really amazing architecture through the bridges and just seeing a whole different kind of face of the river than you would see up at Genesee Valley Park. It feels like you're in the middle of nowhere. There's eagles down there and people salmon fishing, and it's one of the more fun things we get to do during the year because of our various partnerships. So here's a little photo of, coming close to sunset. I think it was last October, 2 years ago, that we got to do a whole bunch of trips to the lower Genesee and really see what it's all about. Aside from our Genesee Valley Park location, we also run New York's only man-made whitewater park. For now, there's some development going on near Montezuma, which we're really excited about. But for now, we've got a really great course with 4 features of increasing difficulty as you go. And it's an amazing training place, for young folks. So getting your kids involved in learning how to paddle early on in life and really deal with whitewater scenarios and water safety has been a really incredible process there. And we also see a whole bunch of adults, and I'm sorry about my phone ringing. There's nothing I can do about that. That's a landline. A bunch of adults come out and they kind of train for their bigger trips out to the Salmon River by utilizing this thing that is just basically always running, and there's never any downtime throughout the summer, which is this really incredible kind of thing to have close to home here. We also do flat water down at Lock 32. We've kind of opened that up. We've been and really expanding access, so you can actually get our boats through Lock 32, down through Show and Place, and down the canal a little further, which is really, really great going up and down. So we've had a whole bunch of trips last year, and you can see here in this photo of what it looks like to be kind of drained down, empties, and then those giant gates open. It feels like you're going through Jurassic Park. It's really incredible. And so we've seen a whole lot more folks kind of really starting to enjoy that part of the canal. Over the past few years, there really hasn't been a whole lot of kayaking going on down there. I'm really hoping to see that expand over the next coming years. And that's our operation. So if any of you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to field them. In addition, I'm going to drop some links in the chat for you guys, just our websites, also our Google Maps locations if you're wondering where those might be. So those are all in the chat as we speak.
John?
Yes.
Someone asked a question on chat about Red Creek and from your place, kind of an interesting trip.
Yeah, so Red Creek is one of our favorite spots, and I'll pull that right back up actually. Share back again. So if you can see the screen here, here's our GWC circle, and definitely the most popular trip for any weekend warrior paddler will be to come to GWC on a sunny day. And what you do is you go just a little bit east, under a few walkway bridges in the Erie Canal, and then you head south, and right here is Red Creek, and it's this beautiful little kind of serene waterway that you kind of lose the sense of being in a big city. There's a lot of wildlife in there. There's a couple bridges that are filled with what I think are barn swallows, but if you're a birdie, I'll just say they're purple martins and give you more incentive to come see us. But yeah, in the summertime, it's just a great little quiet getaway. We haven't been down there yet with the chainsaws. There is a whole lot of wooded space around there, and sometimes it does fill up, but any trips we've had so far haven't brought back any reports of kind of gummed up waterways. So we're hoping it's going to be a good season. That's Red Creek. We love it.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great trip. Another question you might answer on chat here. Do you teach classes to help children make an emergency exit if they tip over in their canoe or kayak?
Absolutely. So the biggest focus of Lock 32 is fast water safety, and every single class starts with a canal side wet exit course. So the first thing you learn to do in a boat at Lock 32 is get yourself out of it and be safe right away.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't do that in the rapids, of course. That happens a little later in the week. But the first thing we do is get them on the flat water, up in the canal, with plenty of watching eyes. We roll them, and then they pop out. A little further down the line, we learn how to do the Eskimo rolls, which is another really important part of it.
Good. Thanks, John. I hope you'll stick around for maybe questions at the end.
Of course.
Okay. Mike, any luck with
Thank you, everybody.
Peter?
Yeah, I got him. He's got a business emergency that he's dealing with at the moment. And
All right.
I will cover a couple of things on his behalf.
Sure.
Peter Abel runs Erie Canal Boat Company. And can I share there, George?
Yep.
And let's see if I can find it. I think, where do I have it on this screen? Let's try this one. Yeah. Here's his website, eriecanalboatcompany.com. And Peter's based out of Fairport. Originally this year, he thought he was not going to have a facility in Fairport because the town was refurbishing the dock area there on the north side of the bridge. But he's recently been told that they will be done with that by June. So they'll be back in business next month, it looks like. In the meantime, he and Riverwatch are partnering to do 2 weekends of paddles. And he mentions it here in Black Creek, and there's some other mention elsewhere on the lower river that is accessible directly from our website. We just put this up yesterday. The announcements are going to go out in Constant Contact and Facebook, I think, today. We're doing the weekends of the 21st through the 23rd and the 28th through the 30th. 21st to 23rd is going to be based on the DEC dock at Black Creek. And the directions are down here in the description. And the 28th through 30th on the lower river at the Petton Street dock. And there are links on here to go make a reservation if you want to reserve any one of 12 either open, sit on top, or enclosed kayaks. Now, these are all kayaks that he has. Peter will be there for limited instruction. I don't think he has any intention of teaching you how to roll in the river up at that point. But as to paddling and how to get the boat up and down the river in that calm area, he's prepared to teach people to do that. And we will be there. And by we, it looks like the answer is me at the moment, to accompany people up and down the river and to talk about what you can see there from a historical standpoint, um, flora, fauna, what have you. So that should be a couple of interesting weekends. And our hope with these always is to get people out on the river who would normally not be there and would normally not get to see the world from that perspective. I expect most of the people on this call are probably pretty experienced, but you may have friends who are not and who are looking for convenient ways to do that. And hopefully those 2 weekends will be nice, and they will lead in then to the canoe-based programs that John Corain just talked about, based both at the Waterway Center and at Pet Street. I think that covers that. If there are any instructions or questions, rather, I'm happy to.
Mike, kind of related to that, there was a question in the chat from Carl Schoenthal. Wanted to know if there was any data on minimum water levels suitable for watercraft types.
Well,
I know we had some discussion about putting that on the map, but we decided at this point not to. But wonder if you had any information about that.
Well, let me tell you what I have recorded from past trips. The trip we did a few years ago from Belmont to Fillmore, which is above Letchworth, obviously. There were spots on the river where if you weren't careful and where you went, you might end up having to get out and drag your boat. If you were careful and you stayed to the main channel, I don't think there was anywhere you couldn't get a kayak through. And the Portageville gauge at that point was reading 9.8 feet. Also, a couple of years ago, we did, and I will refer in a minute to a trip from Mount Morris to Geneseo. Now, those of you who know that area know it to be deeper and calm water. That was an easy paddle, no question of running aground anywhere. It was 8.5 feet. On that trip, there is a washed out dam just upstream of the Geneseo takeout, and that was easily runnable. I am the only person in the group who was there who's had any whitewater experience. I didn't have any problem with it, and the other guys came after me, and I don't think you, George, or Pete, either one of you had a problem with that dam at 8.5 feet. It wouldn't take much. Another half a foot to a foot would probably eliminate that dam as an obstacle at all. Much lower than that, you'd probably want to line your boat through it because there wouldn't be enough depth to float it. So I hope that gives you an indication of
George, could I show my screen for just a second? I was able to get the
Sure.
print tool to work, and I just wanted to.
Yep, go for it.
So as soon as I turned off my video, the map popped up. So I don't think I've ever tried to run the interactive map and use Zoom at the same time. So it's using too much video. So when you use the map tool or the print tool, it will, wherever you're zoomed in, and when you create the PDF, you open it up and it will create a neat little custom map that has all of the features on it, depending on how far zoomed in a scale. So I have a legend and a scale, and this map can be, printed, or you can put it in JPEG format and email it to someone. And so that feature does work if you're not running Zoom at the same time. So.
That's good to know there's an explanation. Thanks, Wayne. Okay. Well, Mike, do you want to continue on with your part of it here? And
yeah, might as well.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's talk about the Yeah, here we go. The Middle Genesee. Unless you want to talk about the Upper Genesee in Thomas's place, George. Do you want to do that first?
No, I'll do it after you. You're already into it, so go ahead.
All right.
And I'll just catch up when you're done.
Well, for better or worse, we kind of define the Middle Genesee as Mount Morris to the Waterways Center. You could go a little further down to Corn Hill before it starts to get dangerous, but for purposes of this, I will cover those areas. This map shows the key access points, their mileage on the river, and in parentheses, the distance from the Mount Morris launch site to that point. And it'll get reiterated here in the subsequent slides. Just to characterize the river here, it is quite different from the river above Letchworth, and a lot of you will already know this, and feel free to chime in and explain it further, because I frankly have not paddled the stretch from Geneseo to Black Creek. I have seen a lot of it from the shore, but I haven't seen it from the water. But in that stretch, at least, there are a number of areas where the banks are extremely high. I think one of you mentioned that in terms of an access point, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But there's some banks in there that are 30 plus feet high that were eroded out in all probability before the Mount Morris Dam was built in the early 50s, when that area of the river used to flood quite regularly and flood out Rochester when it did it. Now that water level is pretty well controlled by the dam, at least at flood times, although a great deal of the water level in normal times is also dependent on what comes down from Canasarega Creek and what comes from groundwater seepage into the river. So in normal times, whether the dam is open or shut doesn't really make a heck of a lot of difference. There is, let's see if that'll do it. Okay, if it won't do it, I'll do this. Here we go. I don't know if any of you have tried to do this. I did several years ago because as a photographer, I've never seen pictures of the downstream side of the dam, certainly not from water level. And I went up there at dawn one day and put in right at the RG&E facility where that parking lot is. It's pretty soupy in the bottom. If you're wearing paddling shoes that aren't laced on, you may get them sucked off trying to walk around in that stuff. But it's not that hard a launch. It's an easy walk with your boat down to the river. And it's only about 1.5 miles, but it really makes for a beautiful morning paddling upriver. You don't want to get closer than, I believe it's 100 yards from the dam. The feds are pretty security conscious about that. And if you come down to it via their trail, there will be signs that will say that. Just be aware if you paddle upriver to it, that you should stay below there's an island right here. And I will also tell you again, in terms of the soupiness, that I walked out into the river with my camera and tripod and my Keen paddling shoes on in order to avoid having as much of the bank in the picture as possible. And when I left, when I decided to go back to the shore, it was a question of take your camera or take your shoes, but you can't take both. So I took my camera and came back and fished around for my shoes in the silt. So that's an interesting thing you can do, and not a lot of people, as I say, do that. George and Pete and I paddled Mount Morris to Geneseo a couple of years ago. That's a 15.5 mile paddle to get 5.5 road miles down down the river. And I brought my good camera with me, and it was a beautiful morning, as you can see from the upper left, and I was eager to take pictures of it, took my good camera out, switched it on, hit the shutter, nothing happened, and then I had a vision of the battery sitting at home in its charger. If you've ever taken any digital pictures, you may have had that experience. So the rest of these were shot with an iPhone. The one in the middle shows what I'm talking about in terms of high banks. There's a lot of bank height there, and that geology and the river erosion there kind of dictates what we're thinking about doing in terms of stream bank stabilization. The work that we would do in there would be focused on the gullies that come down into the river and stopping gully erosion remotely from the river and in the farm fields, rather than trying to do what we do above Letchworth. But it's very peaceful. It's always going to have water in it. You're not going to run aground and have to walk for large stretches of it. It's not going to be challenging, but that's great if you're not all that familiar with what you're doing. Mount Morris has a new dock. I have not seen it. It was not open yet last year, but I gather they've opened it now. Sort of a full-fledged dock instead of what was kind of the goat path walk in. There is a good access point at Indian Fort, which is on our map, about midway between Mount Morris and Geneseo. And Geneseo Access Park is not bad. It's you got to haul your canoe or kayak up a decent hill, but it's a gradual hill. And that's also one of the ones on our one of the two that we've gotten funding to improve. Certainly, I can't remember the route number, but the route out of Geneseo that goes across to Leicester, there is a beautiful parking space similar to Avon and a walkway that then dumps you out, I don't know, 15, 20 feet above the river with a rusty steel barrier at the bottom of it. So that's not something you want to take a shot at. I would plan on Geneseo Access Park, which is slightly north of town. And as I said, there is also a small washed out dam, but under normal circumstances, that shouldn't give you too much of a problem. And you can scout it pretty easily. It's obvious when you come up on it, and you can get out and take a look at it. Now below, downstream of Geneseo, we have York Landing, which is a beautiful landing. I've spent some time, a couple of trips there on the shore. I would say a couple of things about it. One, you can see there's a little bit of white water. It would depend, I guess, on the river level, how serious that is. There is a very steep path that leads down to the river. In higher water levels, there will be no beach. So in higher water levels, you don't want to plan on launching or recovering at York Landing, because if you lose contact with your boat, it's going to be a damn long time before you see it again. However, in a water level like this, it would be fine. You just may want to line your boat up using a rope rather than try and drag it physically. And I would caution you about one other thing. This used to be a real dam and a milling site into the early 20th century, and you will find buried in some of these rocks the protruding metal spikes that were part of that facility. So you want to be careful with the bottom of your boat, and you want to be even more careful if you go to York Landing. But if you're aware of that and the water level is reasonable like it is here in the picture, it's a lovely place to be. And it's also got a great parking area right above it. Avon, we've talked about. That's a picture of the east side of the bank from the west side. It's one of the ones that we're going to be working on right now. Problematical to say the least in getting in there. And Scottsville is a little bit too. Scottsville's got also a beautiful parking area, but you got about a 6-foot drop off into the river at that water level. Again, if the water levels are high and the current is running quickly, I don't think you want to try it unless you really know what you're doing. Black Creek, there's a DEC dock very similar to, or in this picture, an exact replica of what we've got at Petton Street. Those of us who were at the session last week where we talked about Petton Street, and there were quite a number of people then, and I believe probably now, who have Kevlar boats. And we were told in no uncertain terms that the roller docks, which are used here and at Petton Street, are deadly on the coatings of the Kevlar boats. And that's problematical. We need to find some better solution than what we've got there. I think I also heard that Black Creek had installed, the DEC had installed at Black Creek, a supplemental dock to solve that problem. I have not been down there to see it, although I will be down there in 2 weeks with the Erie Canal Boat Group to see what they've got at Black Creek. Other than that, if you got a roto-molded boat or a canoe, Black Creek's a great launch point.
Mike,
And
Mike, you might want to mention, or Black Creek, you can either go up Black Creek or go into the river.
that's right.
Yeah, you can go both directions there.
Yep. And you can go upriver past RIT, or you can go downriver roughly 4 miles or so to, or less than that, 3 miles to the Erie Canal. Or you can go to the Waterway Center, which is only, 3.3 miles away. And you will see John there. He'll be standing on the dock waiting for you, I'm sure, with donuts and coffee.
That's all I do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can go a little below there. There is a dock at Cornhill Landing. But do not go any further than that, or you're going to start to run into one waterfall after another. So that is the Middle Genesee. And do you want to do Upper Genesee now, George, or you want me to go on to the lower?
Well, while you're on there, you might as well. Yeah.
Okay. Then I will stop and restart with, which one is that? Shoot. Oh, there. All right. Lower Genesee, many of you are familiar with it. We've become extremely familiar with it because we do it a lot with ourselves and with other people. There are really only essentially 3 relevant places there in terms of real or potential access. It starts right below the waterfall, right below Lower Falls at Seth Green Island. And then you've got Turning Point Park and Petton Street. And you've also got the potential for launching in the marina or at the powerboat ramp further downriver. But I would not advise those because it's an uncomfortable conflict with swells coming off the lake and wakes from the powerboaters. By way of background, Seth Green Island is a wonderful launch point, but those of you who are familiar with it know that at the top of the hill by the parking lot, there is a fence across the river, a gate across the road that is controlled by RG&E and the city. A couple of years ago, we made a real attempt to get RG&E to move that gate down the hill past the entrance to Seth Green so that people could drive down there and either park or take off their boat and drive back up and park. I will give RG&E credit. They seriously considered that, but in the end, they decided that the security of their Lower Falls generating plant was such that they did not want to do that. So unless you have a very light boat or you are part of a group that can talk to the city about getting the key to that gate, you probably don't want to launch at Seth Green because that is one brutal hill to haul a boat up and down. Now, I have done that with the city, and a couple of years ago, before COVID, we would meet down here at Petton Street, pick up a bunch of people in city parabuses, drive them up to Seth Green, and then John brought the canoes from the Waterway Center to Seth Green, and we launched there and did a one-way trip downriver. And that was a lovely way to do it. For the moment, at least because of not wanting to put a bunch of people in parabuses together, we aren't doing that one-way downriver trip. But you can come upriver from Petton Street and the harbor. And it is the sum total of these two. It's about 4.9 to 5 miles, depending on how closely you cut the corners, I guess, between those 2 points. It makes for a decent paddle. It's a lovely, pretty easy paddle going upstream. Frankly, it's more difficult coming home because typically in the afternoons, the wind is against you. The swells are coming off the lake. And that more than offsets the fact that you're going downstream. But as John said, you are in a wilderness in the city, and it is certainly a unique site. Let's see, this doesn't seem to, yeah, here we go. So I've taken these pictures in a routing that comes from Petton Street going upstream that shows you what you will see if you take today's route. You'll go by the Spirit of Rochester, which is kind of a derelict tour boat. We mentioned to the city on a cruise we took upriver with some of the city officials that they might want to sand the name Spirit of Rochester off the back of that because it's not exactly a good representation of the city's spirit, but nonetheless, it's an interesting site. Thoroughly locked up because its engines work and it's got 2,000 gallons of fuel oil in it, and it is subject to vandalism. So the access doorways into the engine and fuel compartments, I'm told, are welded shut. People have tried to get in there. You will also see the remnants of the old coal and coal ferry docks that used to be a huge facility in that area. And if you happen to have the opportunity to, when we're doing this again, to listen to some of the folks from the Lighthouse Society talking about what used to be down there, because there are people in this town who are still around, and they aren't all that old, who used to take that tour across the lake on the ferry, whose primary activity was actually hauling coal over to Coburg. It's an interesting story. If you time it right, you'll also go by the new McKeel Spirit, which is the cement boat coming over from Picton, Ontario, to deliver cement to Lehigh, to the Lehigh facility at their new dock. at Turning Point. And then, darn. Okay, come on. There we go. Some of the other things that you will see on the way, you go underneath the Veterans Memorial Bridge. Interesting echo down there, but also a really pretty area. If the water level's right, you can get in between Seth Green Island and the east bank of the river, which is even more wild than most of the rest of the trip. This is an eagle I shot on one of our trips with John and the city canoes. That one's around Turning Point on one of the trees by the river. And here's John again on his paddleboard, and the rest of our group from one of the city trips up in the area right below Lower Falls. So it's a beautiful area and easily accessible, and we're running a bunch of trips there in the course of the summer. So if you don't have your own boat and you're interested in doing it, or you want to go with someone else, keep an eye on our announcements, our website, Facebook, and if you're linked up and get our constant contact messages, you will see the announcements of these upcoming trips. And that should be it, I believe, George.
Okay.
Yep. There's Lower Genesee.
Yep. Thanks, Mike.
Any questions while I've still got this up? I would say, as a general rule, by the way, in the Lower Genesee, water levels are pretty much irrelevant. It's going to be irrelevant to canoeing and kayaking anyway. It's obviously relevant to the people
Mike,
on the shore. Yes, Laura.
I noticed that there is a gap between Seth Green and Turning Point Park, and Seneca Park is right in the middle of that.
Yep.
Are there any talks with Seneca Park Zoo or whoever, the city, to see if there's access capability there?
Well, without recapitulating everything we talked about last week in the access discussion.
Sorry, I was out of town.
Yeah, I know you weren't there, so you didn't hear this. There is currently a DEC plan to put a, first estimate was $600,000 facility on the east side of the river in Seneca Park, right in the northern boundary of Seneca Park, accessible from Seneca Park. I think that's Seneca Park Avenue. Down to the river, kind of opposite. It comes out on that footpath opposite the Lehigh cement docks.
Okay.
In general, our feeling has been that that's a waste of $600,000 because it's incredibly steep and a long haul.
Okay.
To get down there, and essentially no parking currently. You'd have to build a parking area. It would be actually easier to get a boat down to the river on the Turning Point side directly across the river. And you don't actually get very much difference between those access points. It's only 1.2 miles
Right.
out of a 5-mile run all the way up to the falls. So our position, I think, would be that doesn't make a lot of sense. What does make sense is to improve the area at Turning Point and the two areas on the east side of the river in Seneca Park.
Okay.
That currently have, certainly in the Seneca Park case, deteriorating walkways that get you down to the river and lousy dock areas, but if improved, could be excellent for taking a break in that 5-mile trip and getting out, stretch your legs, have a picnic lunch or something. So our preference, I think, would be to improve those at considerably less expense and provide not access, but rest areas.
I like that. Yeah,
As
that's great.
opposed to another dock facility here.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
so that's about that, I think.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
There was somebody raised their hand. Did somebody have a question there that raised their hand? I lost it. No? Well, we can save it for later. The other question that came up about the lower river was, are there any updates on dredging in the Genesee River?
Yes, couple of things on
DEC
that.
has announced that, and I don't know if we've got that post on our website yet, Mike. I know we just talked about it the other day.
No, I've got to write the post for that. In fact,
Okay.
to try to do that, I can't do it today, but I'll probably do
Yeah.
it tomorrow. When we say dredging, there are two things to be said in that regard. One is really relates to why we do all this large stream bank work upstream of Letchworth. We lose about 450,000 tons of farmland downstream every year, which is why the river is as muddy as it is. And we spend millions of dollars every year dredging the lower river in order to keep the channel open. And there's some technical reasons, legal reasons why that is done beyond simply allowing boaters to use the harbor. And also dredging out the backside of Mount Morris Dam so that it can continue to operate, and dredging and with private funds, private marinas in the harbor and above. So that dredging to try to take care of loss of farmland, that's kind of a double loss to society, and that's going to go on for a long time, even if we get all the money that we could spend on stream bank stabilization. Eventually, we expect to mitigate that, but not to stop it completely. That said, what George is referring to is an effort by the DEC and the feds under the Federal Resource Conservation Recovery Act, short-term RACRA, to identify and ameliorate the pollution caused by Kodak operations in the lower river. And several years ago, they employed a consulting firm to study the bottom of the river and identify pollutants, basically silver. And they have identified, I think there are 4 areas, essentially from King's Landing down to Turning Point, where where they consider that there are large concentrations of silver in areas that are scoured, where the bottom is scoured at high water events. And they're going to dredge those out. And we will publish, I hope next week, their announcement that they intend now to start actually working on that. There's, my memory serves, there's an area right there at King's Landing. And then there are 2 areas on the east side in the Reed area at Turning Point Park. And I think there's another one on the west side, just upstream of Turning Point Park. And they're going to dredge that stuff out, and they're going to encapsulate what they get back, and then they're going to have to restore the bottom. So that's going to be presumably starting this year.
Yep. Good. Thanks,
Right.
Mike.
Yep.
I'm going to try to fill in for Thomas Rhett. Thomas is the president of Genesee River Wilds, and they've been working for 10 plus years improving canoe and kayak access to the upper river from Portageville all the way to Pennsylvania. And I'm just going to cover a little bit about what he thinks is a good trip that he likes the best. And they're easy trips to do. The first one he mentioned was Transit Bridge to Belfast. And I haven't done this section, but I'm familiar with it. I have done from Belfast to Canandaigua or Fillmore, but this section from Transit Bridge is a pretty easy access. If you look at the pictures here, there's a nice parking lot there across the river, and you can go a very gradual downhill slope and into the water. There's a nice parking lot and a kiosk there. So it's a pretty easy one to get into. And then you a nice paddle downstream to Belfast. And the takeout there is similar. They got a kiosk there, nice easy road to get you down into the water, and then getting into the water is pretty easy because you're right in it. So it's pretty easy. That's a trip that he likes to do. The other one he mentioned was to go from Belfast or Belmont, which is let me just get it a little bit closer here. That's where the county offices are and so on. But the problem with this access point here, this first responders park access, is that you can only go upriver because there's a dam there. You can get out and you can get in and go upstream if you want, which might be a little difficult because there is some current there, and the access in there is difficult. And let me just get this out of here. And then, but what happens here, I'll just show you. You can actually, we're working to try to get a formal access here. There is, right along here. Let me see if I change the thing, but there's here's where the access park is. But you can't, there's a dam right here, so you can't go downstream. But
George, why don't you change the base map to image?
that's a good idea. Good idea. I'll change it to imagery. And then you can see it a little bit better. I'll go in a little bit closer. But you can actually get in here. It's an informal location, but it's easy access, and we're going to try to convert it to a formal one. You go, rather than going in here, you follow the road, and you can see it right alongside this abandoned manufacturing building. There's a road here, and then you can get in the water and go downstream there. So eventually this will show up on our map, but there's a parking lot there. It's a pretty easy place to get into, but it's not on here yet because we haven't agreed with Genesee River Wilds yet to put that on. But you can use it. People use it all the time. And this is the waterfall I'm talking about. You obviously can't. This is I don't know, 10-foot drop maybe, and you're certainly not going to take a canoe or kayak over there. So that's part of it. I'm going to go back to the different base map again. And then I want to just show you, so those are paddling on the river. I don't have the pictures, but Mike has shared some, and we've shared them in the past, and they're on our website. The river here is gorgeous. The part of the river, though, that you might be interested in doing too, which we haven't talked much about, is upstream of Wellsville. There's a lot of nice water here. You can go all the way from, sorry, I'll go a little bit further. Pennsylvania at Genesee Town Park. It's a nice park there. They got easy to get in and out of the water. The river there is hardly looks like a river at that point. And it's a fairly gentle paddle. I think you got to have a decent amount of water, but you can paddle. This whole section is paddleable, is easy to paddle. The thing that's nice is if you're not just a paddler, some of these spots are great fishing for trout. This access point here at Jack Bridge is a beautiful spot for fishing. As you can see there, there were people fishing there today. I took the picture. I actually caught one of the bigger brown trout that I've caught in a long time there. It's a nice access point. And so you can get in there without much trouble. So, and you can paddle really all the way to, not quite to the river park. There's a lot of low head dams in here, especially through the town. But once you get past the town again, you can take the Riverwalk Park and go again. So there's a lot of nice paddling here, and so I'd recommend that too if you get a chance. It's totally different than even the part from Belmont to Portageville. This is a whole nother part of the river that people don't get to see. And like I said, the fishing here is really good, so you may want to consider it for that. I think that's about it for what he told me about. He can tell you a much better story, I'm sure. Someone did ask a question about camping. There are no, that I'm aware of, there's no official camping. On most of the property along the river is private property, but people do camp there. And that's part of what we're also going to work on, because some of those trips you like to extend it, maybe make it a day or so, or over a weekend. It would be nice to know that if you stopped at this particular island or whatever feature that might be along the side of the river, that you could actually stay there and not be worried that it might be a problem. So that's something we have to look at in the future. And that's clearly something you can do in the upper part of the river, because there's a lot of those opportunities to get out and on beaches, or usually rocky beaches, but they're okay. So that's all I had there. Anybody have any questions? Yep. Laura?
For those people who know the river, you might mention something about Fillmore
Oh, yes.
access.
Good point. Yeah, let me, I meant to do that and I forgot. Let me show folks here. This is important. I actually have some news on it anyway. If you look at this map right now, our map, between Candia and Portageville, there's nothing showing on here. And that's a long stretch. That's 20 miles or so, and it's tough to do that. In actuality, in the town of Fillmore, I'll go in here, there is an access point. It's an informal one. It's right here where it says County Route 4. There's a parking lot.
That might be a good satellite view, George.
Pardon me?
That might be good for a satellite view.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Good point. Sorry. Yeah, I'll go in a little bit more. This site is informal. It's not closed. The owner of the property really didn't want it on this map, so it's not on here, but it's still open. And you can get access right here just before the bridge. There's a parking lot, and you can get down and get in the water fairly easily. We are currently working with Genesee River Wilds and a landowner, the farmer that owns the land here, this land right here, to gain access through this side road right here under the bridge and get in the water here. So we'll have a formal access, and that could happen as early as this year. There's not a lot of work that needs to be done to it. The road's already there. They just need a little bit of groundwork here and a parking lot, and they're good to go. So we're hoping that will come up, and we'll be able to put it on the map, and we'll be ready to go. But in the meantime, you can use this location.
I have a question for you too.
Sure.
Back when you were talking about the Belfast to Transit Bridge,
Yep.
is that a place that you can go put in one and come back to the same place? Can you be put in, put out? Is the current negligible there that lets you do that?
I would say not. This whole part of the river, I think there's enough current that it would be hard. I don't know, Mike, what do you think?
I would say it's doable, but you'd have to be a strong paddler. There are going to be some spots, if you do it in relatively low water, the kind of level that I described a little while ago, where you've got to be careful to pick your channel.
Mm-hmm.
When you run into rocky areas, you might well have to get out of the boat and line it back up the river.
Okay.
When you get into calm water, you can probably paddle strongly enough to get back up the current.
And make some headway. Okay.
As a practical matter, that ain't gonna make for a fun day.
No.
So,
I got a second question.
Sure.
I'm not sure what a low head dam is. Is that something you would portage around or just avoid totally?
Well, it depends on them. Some of them, the ones in, up near Wellsville are metal. And they're there to just create a little bit of, headwater it's an intake, I think, for, water supply. And so I think you have to judge each one of them. I haven't really looked at all of them. I would try to go around it. They're very short. I mean, you can go right up to it, get out of your canoe or kayak and go around it. You could make that judgment when you came to it. Even the
Yeah.
ones in the middle of Wellsville. They don't look too bad, but I've seen people stand in front of them, and I've fished there and stood in front of them, and they're not high. And I guess it would depend on the flow. There's a lot of decision making that would have to be going on there. But I guess my inclination is that you'd go around them.
Put your hand back and forth.
My experience is that the town of Wellsville routinely got flooded.
Yeah.
And the low water dams are to hold excess water. There are sort of floodgate sewers that only open one way, but if the river starts pushing on the water, they will not go into creeks and neighborhoods. My memory says that the banks beside those low head dams are steep, and they don't have man-made access. There are no low portage areas that you can drag your canoe, as I remember it. You go up to the dam and the water drops off. So it's a deep pool, basically.
Yep.
Yeah,
Personally,
that-
Wellsville would be best to be avoided anyway if you're going to do a trip there. Either go downstream or go way upstream of it, because it's not very interesting. I mean, you're right in the middle of Wellsville, but those low head dams, I think, would be difficult to navigate.
There are some other ones that are like out in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
A little more south of this, and I just didn't know if they were
Yeah.
around the dam and you could, just pick your way over it, like in the Susquehanna, or
Mhm.
No,
just
that's,
what they were like.
yeah, no, that's a good question. Maybe we'll have to go and inspect each one. I think we put them there to let people know, because we wouldn't want somebody to plan a trip from, to go between them and find out, especially this in Wellsville. You don't want, I don't think anybody would
Right.
want to do that. I've never seen a canoe or kayak in there in the times I've fished there. But once you get past the last one and go to this Riverwalk Park location, it's smooth sailing again.
There's at least one in between Belfast and Fillmore that we've run. And in the water level we ran it in, you could run that dam reasonably well. And we might have scratched a little bit going right over the crest of it. But whenever, done enough whitewater canoeing on rivers with dams, that when there is a sharp horizon in front of you and you can't see any more river, that's time to stop and get out and take a look.
Yeah.
And the worst of circumstances is what Laura just described, that the banks around you are so high you can't get out. I would tell you sometime, if we're together, almost horrifying story about my nearly doing that and going over little falls in the Potomac. But the danger is, there's not too much danger if the water level's so low that you can't get over the dam without scraping your boat. There's that middle level where there's enough water that you can get over the dam, but if you get hung up and you're thrown out of your boat, you can get hung up in the hydraulic on the back side of it.
Right.
And not be able to get out.
Right.
And then there's another water level where it's so high you don't even know you went over it to begin with.
Right.
So it's a matter of caution and scouting anytime you get close to something like that.
Right.
This one's south of Fillmore. I remember we just paddled over it. I remember.
In the water level we had, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of judgment that goes into it. And I think when we started with this map, we thought we could put some kind of judgments in there about what is a safe water level to either canoe and kayak in general, and now this issue about low-head dams. It's a tough decision because there's a lot of criteria that go in making that kind of decision.
That you have to be careful to get out at the Jack Bridge and not go down farther because of the water treatment plant.
Yep.
And then after the water treatment plant, I mean, you can't get out at the water treatment plant. And then they have a dam. And then down in the middle of town are all those dams. So getting out at the Jack Bridge is important.
Right. Yep.
I would suggest that actually a bigger danger in that stretch of the river than the low-head dams is the possibility of strainers and down timber in the river.
Yeah.
Because I went down with the Genesee Wilds paddle group in the spring a couple of years ago, and we had some people who were novices who in one of the bends of the river managed to get themselves into that situation. Luckily, the water level was low enough that we could get in and get them out with a rope. But had the water level been another foot higher, it would have been a serious problem.
There was a question that popped up in the chat of or actually two questions. One asked to repeat the names of some organizations you mentioned. And the other one was, what is the access not on the map from Kaneadea to, didn't catch the site that you were referring to as the two.
I'm not sure I understood that. The Fillmore
So
site, maybe we
you're starting at Kaneadea, and you were talking about a trip from Kaneadea to some other location.
Right. Okay.
Wanted to repeat what that other location was. And I
Yep.
don't remember
Transit
offhand.
Bridge. Well, let's see. I talked about from Belmont to, let me just go a little bit further here. I said from first, just a new site just downstream of First Responders Park where you have to go past this dam here.
Yeah, if you zoom in a little bit, you'll see the site is actually called Belmont there. So
It's called what?
Belmont, that one near Amity there.
Yeah, this First Responders Park is in Belmont. There's Belmont right there. And there's a downstream access and you can go downstream from there.
Yeah, it's actually labeled as First Responders Park. You're correct.
Right. And then you can go to, I was covering from there to Transit Bridge and then Belfast. And you can go Belfast to Canadea. I didn't cover that one, but, and then the other one was Fillmore. I don't know. That's the one that's not on the map.
Marcia, was that the one you were looking for?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that's this one right here. That's the one I covered.
Yeah, I just couldn't write fast enough. I'm
Okay.
sorry. And I didn't catch the name. It was Belfast.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Did we answer the questions there? Wayne?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, there was the other question was there was some a little bit a while ago. About 12 minutes ago, there was a question about, please repeat the names of organizations to look up. I don't.
No.
Well,
we
a couple
mentioned-
of them that have been mentioned are Erie Canal Boat Company and Genesee Waterways Center. We talked about the DEC, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation.
Genesee River Wilds.
Genesee River Wilds.
Yep.
Mary, are we answering your question?
Okay, well,
And of course, Genesee River Watch, somebody mentioned.
yeah. Oh, speaking of that, Sarah, I see that. She asked me, just one last thing for folks who like the river and like the work that we do. We worked with New Belgium Brewing Company, with a Western New York distributor, and they're working with McGregor's Bar and Grills, the three of them, and are offering pints of New Belgium beer. And if their Fat Tire beer, if you take a pint of that, they're going to donate $1 to Genesee River Watch. So if you got time in the next month or two to go to and enjoy a nice cold beer, McGregor's, and $1 of that pint would go to us. So just encourage you to take up that opportunity. We'll post something on our website about that soon.
We're happy to take donations on our website also.
Yeah.
Directly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're a little bit past 10 o'clock. Certainly feel free to give us a call anytime, an email through our contact, or contact me directly. That we'd be glad to try to answer your questions. If you're planning a trip and you had some specific details you wanted to know about, give us a call. If we can't answer them, we can find somebody who might. So if not, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And
Thank
if
you.
Wayne, you could hang on too, and Mike at the end, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Hey, Wayne.
Yeah.
My question was about the chat. I'm recording the session, but I'm wondering about how do you save the chat? Can you do that?
If you look at, actually, can I share my screen?
Yep.
All right, so you see the chat messages right here?
I don't
Is
see.
it allowing me to show you my chat or no?
I don't, and that's, all I see is your screensaver.
Okay. Yeah, it's not showing it, but when you're in the chat and you're at it, whenever you're at the last message, you see 3 little dots.
Yeah, let me share mine. Are you on share? So I can see it? Okay, yeah, 3 little dots.
When you click on the 3 dots, it'll say save chat. But one of the
there it
neat,
is. Yep.
one of the neat little features in Zoom I figured out is that you can actually, when you're on the website for Zoom, you can change it. You can flip a setting that will always save your chat when you have a Zoom session
Okay.
into, to the Zoom to your default Zoom folder. And I use that when I'm teaching class, because sometimes students will ask me questions in the chat, and when I'm teaching, I never see them.
Right.
So I may look at it after class, or somebody says, "Oh, I asked you a question about," and I can go back and look to see what they asked me. And it's a very handy thing, because I never think, because I rarely think to save it, although I just did that a moment before you asked that. You can always save it on an individual basis if you're on Zoom with somebody else, for instance.
Right. Okay.
Unless they've locked that feature down.
All right. Okay, that's good to know. Thanks.
Okay. Do you want to turn off recording now, George?
I am. I guess I'll turn it off.